Kari Lake, the deranged MAGA cultist and self-proclaimed governor of Arizona, has gone viral for attacking someone whom she once consistently and publicly supported, Trump rival Ron DeSantis, while simultaneously dropping an ominous ad suggesting that she's going to run for the United States Senate in 2024. Yikes. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. Maybe check out my Patreon. I'd appreciate the support. All right, it's an indictment of contemporary American politics that somebody like Kari Lake, who is not an office holder, who has not held office prior, who failed spectacularly in her attempt to run for the governorship of Arizona in 2022. Now, she claims that she legitimately won, much like her master Donald Trump did with the 2020 election. And yet, Katie Hobbs, according to all relevant authorities, won the election and now resides in Arizona's governor mansion. But even though she has no real political experience, no real political capital, she is a prominent, powerful, influential voice within the Republican Party. Of course, because the GOP is not a responsible governing party, it's an authoritarian death cult of personality. And so in that context, you don't have to have political savvy, political experience, things like that. All you need to do, because the only currency that actually matters, is earn the patronage, enjoy the patronage of the cult leader, which in this case is Donald Trump. And Kari Lake, but based on all accounts, enjoys high levels of that currency. And yes, she's gone viral because now that she is truly in the Trump orbit and Ron DeSantis is technically Donald Trump's rival, not much of one, but he is one, she is now attacking him in force, saying things that contradict things she used to say about Ron DeSantis, not 5 years ago or 3 years ago, but 1 year ago. And so she had a recent appearance on the Patrick Bet-David podcast, PBD, and he is a Trump-supporting, DeSantis-sympathizing right-winger. We've seen him get his clock cleaned by Destiny and David Pakman and Kyle Kulinski and Sam Cedar. And yet somebody like Kari Lake, with whom you would think he would have much in common because they both love Trump, she says things that even make him scratch his head. So we're going to play a couple of clips here and unpack it all together.
On that face-off between DeSantis, let us not forget that DeSantis also shut the beaches down. DeSantis took a page out of Gavin Newsom's playbook. Despite what he says, he shut the beaches down. He did force vaccines. He did force face masks on our kids. So he tries to act like he was perfect. And Florida was
DeSantis forced vaccines on kids?
He forced vaccines on people, on workers. He forced face masks on children. And he was for all that. DeSantis was for all of that. So he thinks that we forgot that as well. Now, granted, he didn't continue the misery as long as...
Was it 1 month or a couple of weeks on what it was?
It was a little more than that. The beaches were shut down to people.
Right.
So anybody who shuts a beach down...
So, listen, now, again, this contradicts things that she's said in the past. I will say she does have a point in the sense that DeSantis is indulging, as all Republicans do, in revisionist history. He did employ at least some of the COVID best practices for some length of time during the pandemic. Now he tries to distance himself and say, we did the exact opposite of whatever Fauci, I shouldn't use that Southern accent because he doesn't have a Southern accent, but he says things like, we do the exact opposite of what Fauci said. We rejected Fauci's recommendation and the tyrannical CDC or whatever, when in fact, in many instances, DeSantis did indeed abide by CDC best practices for a relatively short amount of time, which is why Florida has an absurdly high per capita death rate and infection rate with respect to COVID. But, she was right to call him out. Hey, DeSantis is saying one thing now, but he did some things that contradict it. But speaking of contradictions, Kari Lake herself engages in a litany of contradictions in this interview. So this is another clip. And while she's talking, along the side here are tweets which contradict everything she's about to say.
And the cost of living has gone up a lot here in Florida. I mean, I think it's great. Don't get me wrong. Florida's fantastic, but I don't think that's because Ron DeSantis is governor. I think Florida's a great place to live, and I think it's actually become harder to live in Florida.
As a guy that's a fan of both DeSantis and Trump policies, I can comfortably say DeSantis is the reason why we're here with the policies and the lifestyle of Florida. We love
Florida's
breakers.
Great.
We love Florida. We love coming down here and doing what we do here. But he had a lot of the good policies that even the NBA felt safe here. Sports leagues felt safe here. Even AOC partied here. I mean,
That's
even
right.
the left would come here to party.
Yeah.
The policies are effective policy.
So that's PBD standing for Ron DeSantis here. And what's funny is while Kari Lake was talking, alongside were tweets saying from her calling him the greatest governor in the country, somebody who set the standard for conservatism, the greatest conservative governor in the country. Congratulations, Governor DeSantis, on your reelection. You set the standard. Somebody compared her to Ron DeSantis at one point, and she thanked that person for the comparison. Thank you for comparing me to the greatest Republican governor in the country. So she's contradicting herself now. Although, again, I will say, to throw her a bone, she does have some great points about the issues that Florida experiences. Ron DeSantis, again, engages in revisionist history and pretends that Florida is this perfect paradise, and yet it's struggling with various issues. Natural disasters for which he is relying on the federal government, the same Biden administration, which he constantly mocks. The highest inflation in the country, the highest inflation out of any of the 50 states. Again, disproportionately high COVID infections and deaths because of his, schizophrenic approach to the COVID management, all kinds of things. I want to play one more clip here just to kind of drive the point home with respect to what Kari Lake used to say about Ron DeSantis, even as early as a year ago.
He is gutsy. The guy has bigger... Okay. Wait, let me think about how I want to word this. My staff always says, whatever you do, do not say balls. So I'm not going to say it. That guy has a backbone made of steel. I'll tell you what he's got. I don't know if you heard of this, but he's got BDE. Anybody know what that means? Ask your kids about it later. I call it big DeSantis energy.
Yeah, everything's all like a genital metaphor with her at all times. It's very strange. So again, just an absolute shameless contradiction. I don't like Ron DeSantis. I think he's awful, but I like him, or dislike him rather, for legitimate reasons, whereas Kari Lake likes him or dislikes him based purely on what Donald Trump happens to think about DeSantis at the time. So it's very grifty, it's very shameless, it's very hypocritical, and I just wanted to point that out. That's why she's going viral. But then she did something else about the same time, which is she teased a run for the United States Senate. This has been reported for weeks, and then a few days ago she dropped this ad, so we will watch it and brace ourselves together.
Reports out of Washington say Kari Lake is getting ready to run with an announcement expected in October.
And she's going to probably run for Senate in 2024.
I could totally see you in the United States Senate. What's the latest? Are you going to do it?
She's going to do some interviews starting in, September, or maybe an announcement.
Is Kari Lake going to get into this race? These are the questions.
What's next for Kari Lake?
It is my duty to the citizens of Arizona to stay in. They think that I'm going away. They got another thing coming.
Stay tuned. Ooh, chilling, bone chilling. The United States Senate has enough problems. We don't need to add it by electing Kari Lake. And this is the situation. Arizona is a purple state. It's not a red state. It's not really a blue state. It's purple. It's competitive. Kyrsten Sinema, whom we all know and loathe, she has helped contribute to the Democratic caucus's majority, even though she is now an independent. So I would rather have Kyrsten Sinema than a Republican. That's unquestioned, because she typically does vote with President Biden more often than not. But I would love to replace her with a loyal progressive Democrat, somebody who doesn't pull the stunts that Kyrsten Sinema does with respect to registration and holding out on key votes, even though she votes, again, overwhelmingly with the president. The few times she withholds the votes, it's like pulling teeth. She won't do anything with respect to neutralizing or diminishing the filibuster so we can pass crucial legislation with a simple majority. All the things. I'd love to get rid of Kyrsten Sinema in the next election cycle. And she's up against a progressive Democrat, Ruben Gallego, and he's very competitive. But because Arizona's a purple state, there are like dynamics at play. A third-party candidate running would absolutely have enormous potential to be a spoiler because, again, the Republicans are competitive. Kyrsten Sinema has not announced that she's running for re-election, but she has teased that she might. There's been reporting about that. And if she does, reporting indicates she intends to court more of the Republican vote than the Democratic vote. You have Republican, I think Blake Master is attempting to, he lost in 2022, or excuse me, in 2020, but he's attempting to run for re-election as well, run for the candidacy as well. So you have so many dynamics there. You have a relatively progressive Democrat like Ruben Gallego. You have a wild card like Kyrsten Sinema, who's more loyal to Democrats than not, but is still a challenge and somebody we'd love to get rid of with somebody who's better fit for office. You have a Republican like Blake Master. You also have now potentially Kari Lake. So it could be an absolute free-for-all, which could throw the balance of the Senate off enormously. We'll definitely see what happens. I suppose it would be possible for Kari Lake to tease a Senate run and then to pivot wildly into something else. She's absolutely deranged in that respect. But yeah, my fear is she's indeed running for the Senate, and hopefully Democrats can find a way to take advantage of that for themselves. But there's no telling. All I can say is the last thing we need is somebody like Kari Lake in the United States Senate. Congress has enough problems already.